Hi, I'm Chuck Samikian,
And I'm John Tallheimer. Welcome to the HR Stories Podcast,
where there's a lesson in every story.
I think it'll be fine. John, you look good, you sound good, and gosh darn it, people like you.
Hey, people like me. They really, really like me. Hi, wow, here we are. So we're doing this, Chuck. We're like, both of us are in partial studios. I'm in a hotel room in Nashville. Just did a full class on emotional intelligence today. And tomorrow I am doing my class on HR for nonprofits.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
excellent.
Very excited. They all get a book as part of their admin costs. So they all get that. And so I'm really excited to do that and talk to them about our book, The Ultimate Guide to HR, and how they can use it to be better in HR. What are you up to?
Yeah, folks, did you hear that? If you need a trainer or a some sort of workforce development expert, John Tallheimer, my podcast partner, is your guy. He is not only an excellent trainer, but he is into the nonprofit workspace. So if you have a nonprofit, know someone that has a nonprofit and they need some sort of training, you got to go with John. And I don't know if you heard what John said. He's also offering for all participants in his classes, The Ultimate Guide to HR Checklist Edition, which is our book that is available on Amazon. John, I just wanted to throw that out there a little bit more because sometimes I think you're too subtle and humble with what you are doing, and you're becoming the person for the go-to for nonprofits when it comes to training and workforce development stuff.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's great. Yeah, I definitely love it. I love working with nonprofits. I do a lot of strategic planning with them. Lots of different stuff. We got a lot of things going on with the nonprofit world. What about you, Chuck? What are you up to? I know you got a little construction going on in the background. What's going on?
Yeah. I'm down here in the Florida Keys in a condo, and it is got a little construction going on. Work as an HR director is chugging along, all kind of interesting stories. I will tell you, and I'm not going into too many details, but you see a lot of things out there about mental health, John, and just about how employers need to pay attention to it and stuff. But it's really something when you live it. We've had a couple of situations at the resort. We had one of our international students that definitely needed some help. She was middle of the night outside screaming and yelling, and people woke up, went to see what she's doing. She said she's praying. For her, it was more of a spiritual thing. She said she was trying to rid herself of demons, and she was seeing the man in the mirror and the man in the shower stall and glass reflection. Anyways, she's gone back to her we gave her a chance to go and leave and go get some help. But it's really something when you're dealing with these things right on, spot on. And you have to remember, you may think, oh my gosh, they're crazy. And other people are like, oh my gosh, they're crazy. But you as the HR person, as the leader, need to have a calm and a more centered way of dealing with these things, because these folks definitely need assistance. And what you can do as an employer, whether they stay with you or not, you need to approach it. So that's mainly a lot of what I've been dealing with, a couple of real life situations like that.
Yeah, and I think, you're dealing with them because you also give them housing, right? And so that's a different level. And you have people that are coming in from out of the country and work there, and that means they're away from home, and like all those stability things aren't there for them, and so you end up being kind of that for them, and then finding that for them. And some people are very successful in that role. I know you have a lot of successful employees in that role, and they do wonderful work for the resort and that kind of stuff. But again, I think we find that in all companies, and I love that we're talking about wellness and mental health issues, I think, are really important for everyone. We need to be paying attention to that. And as we always say, treat the whole employee, right? Be holistic with your approach to employment.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on. I'm excited about our episode today. I've got normally we do a Q&A session, folks, but today's is going to be kind of a Q&A stories. So we've got a question, and instead of answering it like I normally do or John would normally do, I'm going to tell a story for each question. So I think it should be kind of fun. Let's have some fun with it. And then as usual, John, I know you like to kind of dig in and pick out a couple of good, insightful nuggets from our stories.
Me? You know that.
Yeah,
I'm always looking for the nuggets. The gold. I'm looking for the gold, Chuck. I'm looking for the gold. Yeah. Bring the story, and I'll find the gold.
All right. Well, let's dig away. Do you want to throw it out to me, and then throw out the first question, and I'm going to tell you a story.
All right. Here is our first question of the day, Chuck. What would HR do when an employee reports racial harassment by coworkers?
Yes. So this happens. It happens more frequently than you would think. So it is a great question. One we wish we didn't have to come up so often, but here's a story that pretty much underscores why HR has to take these complaints seriously, follow through, and not treat them as just another item on the checklist. Although we do like checklists, but you do need to follow through. So I want to talk about Stephen Scott. Stephen Scott was a prep cook, and he was a seasoned prep cook, John, with over 20 years of experience.
No pun intended.
Yes, I know. You caught it. You caught it. He's a very seasoned prep cook. 20 years experience. In July 2022, he began working at a Las Vegas restaurant called The Beast. Now, I've never been to Vegas. This sounds like a pretty interesting restaurant, The Beast. And it was owned by a company named Olives Incorporated. Now, from the start, I guess it is all kind of food, but The Beast. I wonder if The Beast.
I know,
maybe it's a meat restaurant.
We were in Vegas in November of last year. I don't remember seeing The Beast.
Yeah, The Beast doesn't sound like a vegan restaurant, so I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not.
So from the start, things were not great with Mr. Scott. You see, two coworkers regularly mocked Stephen's music taste, made degrading comments about his intelligence, repeatedly used racial slurs, calling him a monkey, and even the N-word. And this wasn't just casual cruelty. It happened during shifts, in front of other employees, and even at the company holiday party in front of Stephen Scott's grandchildren.
What you're telling me is at a company party, somebody had the nerve to insult somebody else in front of their family.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, especially in front of the kids. So I will tell you, to his credit, Stephen did exactly what HR asks employees to do. He reported everything. He sent emails. He filled out a formal statement. He even asked for help. But what did HR do, John? What did HR do?
I hope they did the right thing.
Well, they ran what the court would later describe as a cursory investigation. Yes, a cursory investigation. And concluded the coworkers did not act with malicious intent. So no action was taken.
All right. So let me guess. No action was taken. And that means that Stephen had a great life. Everything was fine after that, he says with sarcasm.
Yeah, well, I think things got worse. And here's a trap that some HR people may fall into, is that they don't want to be bothered. They don't want to, I got a million things to do. This is just you know what? Let me just like look into it and hope it goes away. I know it. I know the feeling. I'm telling you, there is no time when anyone walks through the door, makes a complaint, and I am like, all right, let's go. Let's do this investigation. We're all excited. You're just like, can I wake up from this dream? I really hope this isn't happening. I hope these accusations are not true, but you have to do a solid investigation, which is part of our story. So let me just kind of not get too far ahead. So after the investigation, the coworkers felt emboldened. You see, it was a cursory investigation, not a lot of meat to this restaurant's HR investigation. And so the coworkers feel emboldened, right? The harassment continues, but it not only continues, it intensifies. Stephen then reports it again, but still nothing changes. Eventually, in early 2023, he felt he had no choice but to resign. And that's where the court found the heart of the matter. This was a constructive discharge driven by a hostile work environment that HR failed to stop.
I'm going to ask, but I think I know where this is going. What did the court say?
Yeah, so for our listeners out there that don't know what a constructive discharge, if you are a regular listener to HR Stories podcast, you will know it's where you allow conditions at work to be so intolerable that the employee has no choice but to quit. You create or construct a scenario that the employee leaves. That's what constructive discharge. So what did the court say? In June of 2025, how timely, a Nevada federal judge awarded Stephen $100,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress and another $100,000 in punitive damages, plus attorney's fees and court costs. The court found that Olives Incorporated acted with reckless disregard for Stephen's civil rights and explicitly called out the HR department's failure to take meaningful action.
I mean, and I'm thinking, like, right, because here's this Olives Incorporated. How many people did they have? Did they have an HR person, or did they have an HR person, like somebody that was office manager in HR, right? Because you and I know, I mean, we kind of wrote our book for those people. We know that they may not have the full experience, and they may, and I don't know what happened in this case, and you're going to tell us, but they may just follow what the big boss says. Like the big boss is probably like, don't worry about it. Just do a real quick investigation. Don't worry about it. And this is where companies, business owners open themselves up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the court kept referring to HR. So there must have been someone or something that identified themselves as the HR department. But the lesson here is basic. Whether you're a business owner that doesn't have HR, or you are a business owner that does have HR, or you're an HR person, you do not minimize the complaint or hide behind intent. Oh, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. We don't really mean to pick on him. We're just joking. We're trying to keep the atmosphere light, because impact matters. Let me repeat that. Don't hide behind intent. Intent does not matter. Impact matters. You need to follow through with. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you because I want to make sure people understand what we're saying when we say impact matters. So what we're saying is, in this case, the shoe chef, Stephen, that these comments were impacting how he felt about work. Did he feel secure? Did he feel safe? And so maybe they were joking, but it doesn't matter if they thought they were joking. It's how Stephen was receiving it. Obviously, he complained twice, right? He kept bringing it back up. The company should have addressed it.
Exactly. And so you have to follow through with a real investigation, interview witnesses, document the findings, take disciplinary action if necessary, and understand that ignoring the problem or just brushing it off can make things worse. And it can make things worse very fast. Courts expect more from HR, and well, rightly so.
Well, you said it before, Chuck. If HR doesn't act, the courts will.
Absolutely. Well said
Yeah.
and well tied up. Way to tie up.
Bringing that all together. All right.
Story.
Are you ready, HR expert Mr. Chuck Simikian, for question number 2?
Bring it on, John. Bring it on.
All right, here it is. We've invested a lot of our DEI efforts over the last few years with all this political pushback, especially the new executive order from President Trump. Should we scale things back, or is it safe to continue? Oh, I want to hear a story about this, Chuck.
Is it? Yeah, I'm going to tell you a story about that. Is it safe to continue? Well, let me tell you a story. There's a mid-sized general contractor in the Midwest. We're going to call them Harmon Building Company. And over the past few years, they've worked hard to diversify their workforce. They offered mentorships for underrepresented groups, built partnerships with community colleges, and added DEI goals to manager performance reviews. But after the Trump president's January 2025 executive order ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity, that's the title of it, the leadership team hit the brakes. You see, they weren't sure what was still legal. Their DEI director resigned, HR panicked, and employees started whispering about reverse discrimination lawsuits. So what did they do? They reached out to legal counsel, they ran a confidential DEI audit, and they retooled their programs. They didn't cancel them. But to protect them, they shifted the focus from race or gender preferences to broader inclusion efforts, like supporting first-generation workers or standardizing promotion pathways. They created opt-out mentoring programs. They reviewed interview protocols, and they made sure any plus factors weren't based on protected characteristics. So it was kind of a pivot, not a retreat.
I think that's really smart. I think you said it, but the laws haven't changed, right? And so the laws are still the laws, and we need to protect it. In the last court case, the Supreme Court ruled that Title VII is about the individual. It's not about a group of individuals. And so that means that if a white male, is being discriminated because of my white maleness, I have every right to talk about it. I have every right to come in. And I think that's a good point, right? And so I think that's a good thing. And so we need to be careful about that and make sure that we're kind of thinking about that. Things like quotas, race, sex-based hiring preferences are set aside just for women and people of color. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and I know you're very passionate about this and you've talked about it. And I know you can always add a little extra to this type of story. So the bottom line here is, if your DEI program gives someone a leg up because of protected trait like race or sex, you are in risky territory. But if you're focused on fair access, clear job standards, and helping all employees succeed, you're still doing the work just without stepping into the legal quicksand.
Yeah. And then I would always, at this point, really talk to an employment lawyer and have them go through your program to make sure that you're not doing anything unintentionally that could get you in trouble. And if you're a federal contractor, I would definitely get an employment lawyer and go through that, because they're going to be looked at much more closely than people in the private sector, right? And so just making sure that you're doing that, I think, becomes really important in there. So what's the guidance, Chuck?
The guidance, it's not much different than what you just shared. Get that legal checkup, have the attorneys audit your initiatives. Not all DEI is illegal, but some approaches may need tweaking. Focus on fairness. You can still do mentoring and then leadership pipelines and recruitment outreach, just not on protected characteristics. Be transparent and consistent. Again, and John, we've talked about this so many times, but it just got to keep repeating it. Communicate why you're making changes. Communicate. If you don't communicate, people will make things up. And employees just need clarity and trust more than slogans. More than that, a slogan.
More than having a poster of your values on the wall and not doing anything about them. Sorry, I'm a little bitter. And remember, doing nothing has risks too. You might face reverse discrimination lawsuits if you keep your old policies, but you could also face claims from women or minorities if you just gut DEI altogether, right? And so again, we cannot discriminate based on race, based on color, based on sex, based on ethnicity, genetics, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you need to pick a path and be ready to defend it.
Yeah. And I will add, just, there's a lot of conversations. Some companies have cut it back, right? You hear like, oh, we cut it back. And then other companies are like, no, we're championing it. We're moving forward. It's still important. And I read an article. What was the article said? It said something that the companies with DEI, are doing better. I don't remember if it was in sales or retention of employees or something like that. So think about the impact it will have on your overall business and kind of think through that as well.
All right.
Well, that was a good conversation. I really kind of liked the DEI. I was my computer was kind of failing, so I jumped out of there for a second, but I think it's an important topic. I'm glad that was asked. So, all right, number 3, question for number 3. Can you offer flexible remote work without sacrificing productivity or culture?
Yeah. So this is one that I really, well, first of all, I know you're going to be teaching some hybrid remote work classes coming up. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, you haven't heard too much about remote work lately, but this came up, and this was announced in June 2025. It's effective in July 2025. Citi, like Citibank, Citi Visa, Citi CITI announced that they're going to have a 2-week remote option for hybrid employees during August. Kind of a nod to employee well-being and flexibility during a traditionally slow business month. This isn't the first time Citi has made this move. The bank has already offered a similar perk back in December. But what makes this notable is that Citi's strategy directly contrasts with industry peers like JP Morgan Chase and BNY, which, as we have spoken about on the HR Stories podcast, have doubled down on mandatory office attendance. And while JP Morgan told all employees to return in 5 days or return 5 days a week, Citi continues to lean into a hybrid model, showcasing a different interpretation of how to maintain that productivity and culture.
I think that's a really important. Again, right? Every company has to do what's best for them, right? And there are jobs that are just not possible to do remote or hybrid, right? They need to come in. But other jobs are, and you have to think about company culture. You have to think about collaboration. You have to think about productivity. You have to think about employee engagement. All of those things are necessary. You can't be just like, oh, we're going to do this for productivity, and you get more productivity, but you lose employees. They quit, right? And so you have to really think through this at a high level and be very strategic about your decision in the organization.
Yeah. Their chief HR officer, her name is Sarah Wechter. So Sarah emphasized this whole thing, and she says, whether working in the office or remotely, it's essential that we remain as productive as ever stay connected, collaborate effectively, and deliver on our commitments. And the message I believe she was trying to get across here is flexibility is possible if the expectations are clear.
I love that. And so, as you said, Chuck, 2 days from now, I'll be delivering some sessions on remote and hybrid work. So I had a client come to me and said, look, we're still hybrid, we're still remote. We need help with our managers and our leaders. How do we manage that? How do we keep that up? How do we do it? And it was funny. So I started looking into this. Remote work's not new. Remote work is not new. And so I started looking, think about sea captains, right? So they have a boss, but they are sent out by sea. And back in the day, they had no communication. There wasn't somebody going, okay, where are you now? What are you going to do? Think about regional sales manager or sales managers back in the day, right? They would get a territory. That would be their region. And they would have to go out and they would have to do those things. Foreign reporters, signal corps, right? Telegraph operators. All of them have been working remotely away from their supervisor forever. And so there are some really good lessons that we look. And I learned a new term. You may know it, Chuck. And they use it in the military, and then it carries over into some of the first responders. They call it command intent or commander's intent. And that's basically, this is the mission. This is what we're trying to do. And this is what we want to accomplish. And I can't communicate that to you. You have to make a decision based on that command intent or that commander's intent.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. It's really what Sarah's saying. We need to have very clear expectations so our employees, if they're not sure what to do, they know the command intent. They know the mission. They know what's going on. And I think it's a good lesson
about that. Yeah, I love that. I love that concept in the military concept. And some people are like, well, I don't have a place in regular business. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. What is the intent? If I have to make a decision, I don't have to bug my boss every time. I'm going to be like, what's his intent? What's the command intent of my general manager, command intent of the ownership? I like that. So,
I think it's even in your business, right?
Yeah.
In the resort, a lot of your employees are not walking directly with the manager, right? Yes, they have instant communication with them, but if they knew the mission and the command's intent, they could make decisions. Oh, our command intent, we want to make sure all of our customers have a 5-star, 4-diamond experience. I think you have 4-diamond experience. That means that if I'm serving somebody and something goes wrong, I'm going to come to you. I don't need to go talk to my boss. Right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I guess HR pros, what can you take from this? First of all, this isn't about being pro or anti remote work. It's, as you say, companies have to do what's best for their company. And in this case, it's knowing your people and aligning the policy with the culture.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of move on here, but I do want to just note, right? I just worth noting that requiring remote workers to be in a location where they have legal right to work, I think that's important, right? And knowing, right? And so deciding like, hey, we're going to have remote workers, but you can't work in California, you can't work in New York, you can't work in Colorado. That's acceptable. You just have to be clear and let them know. And one of the things you have to push is if you're moving locations, you need to let HR know.
Yeah. So, all right, I guess the bottom line here, and we'll wrap it up, structured flexibility is a key word. I love command intent. That's a new thing for me, new terminology, but the philosophy of that is as old as I've been around doing HR and management. But structured flexibility with purpose and policy, it can be your competitive advantage. You just have to balance it with strong communication, clarity in roles, and a focus on the outcomes.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. And so are we ready? Question, Chuck, number 4.
Sure. I think we have time definitely for one more question. And Are you ready? I'm ready.
All right. If you're ready, I'm ready. I just have to read the question. So I got the easy part. You got the hard part to answer it. All right. We're a small business with under 50 employees. Oh, that's interesting. And recently added some DEI training. But with all the wait, is that the same question? With all the
No,
lawsuits
it's not.
in the
It's a little different. It's a little different.
Okay, but with all the lawsuits in the news, we're nervous. If we get a complaint about harassment or discrimination, what's our actual responsibility? How can we protect our team and our business?
Yeah. So it's another DEI question, but a little bit of a twist. This one involves Culver's. You ever been to Culver's? They got cheese curds and great French fries.
Yeah. That's up there in the Midwest, right? Minnesota, Wisconsin, up there,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yes. So this is a
I
little.
love that area.
And so this is an actual court case regarding DEI, and it is a case that made headlines. Not the entire Culver's chain, by the way. This is a small group of franchise locations in Minnesota run by a single operator.
Yeah.
That opens up a whole other can of worms with the franchises, right? But they just settled with the EEOC for $261,000 across 2 lawsuits. Why? Because they failed to act when multiple employees came forward with serious complaints.
The EEOC alleged a pretty awful range of misconduct, racial and homophobic slurs, creepy gifts to teenage girls, comments about someone's sex life, even underpaying an employee with an intellectual disability. And it just wasn't one person. This included multiple employees from different locations.
Yes. So you're familiar with the story. I love that.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay, because it's been in the headlines. This was a big deal. And what made the case such an eye-opener was these weren't all the same claims or the same store or even the same type of discrimination. But the franchisee made one big mistake across all of them. Once again, similar to our earlier story, they didn't take the complaints seriously. And,
Come on, people.
Under federal law, that's what the EEOC focuses on, whether the company knew or should have known and failed to act.
Yeah, I think that should have known. I talk about that in my classes where there was a situation where we had an employee come up and said, "Hey, I'm being sexually harassed in the workplace," and they had a conversation with the person, and he said to them, "Well, please don't tell anybody else." Right? And the HR person said, "Well, I have to do an investigation, because if that HR person didn't do an investigation and that employee decides to go to the EEOC, the company is like, well, we didn't know about it. The HR person did, or the supervisor did," right? And so kind of paying attention to that, I think it's important. And to make things more complicated in this case, Chuck, this included a sexual orientation claim, even though the current EEOC chair has distanced the agency from LGBTQ plus discrimination case, but the EEOC still moved forward and settled it.
Exactly. So here's 3 takeaways for our small business friends out there. First of all, harassment is your responsibility, even if it's between coworkers, not managers. You cannot ignore complaints in hopes it settles down. You need to investigate, take action, document what you did. Multiple risk categories equals multiple legal exposure. Don't assume that one policy or training covers everything. You've got to think about sex, race, disability, and sexual orientation, especially if you offer multiple operate multiple sites or shifts. John, a lot of people will just do, we did our sexual harassment training. Yeah, but let's replace the word sex with race or disability or religion, okay? Did you also say these things, very similar to sex, but if you do these things, religious harassment is just as real as sexual harassment.
Wow.
And franchisees do not get a pass. The EEOC does not always go after big brands they'll pursue individual operators, especially if the complaints show a pattern of neglect.
Yeah, and we see this a lot with franchisees. And part of being a franchisee is you assume liability for your business, not the franchisor. I mean, we've told many stories where the franchisee messed up because a lot of times they don't have an HR person. They don't have that, right? And so you got to think like, all right, I'm running a business. What's my liability? Who's my HR consultant? Who's my person helping me with this? And setting up clear training. And I'm telling you, you have to do it on a regular basis. One and done does not work in these cases. You have to do it. It's a tough story, but it's also a chance for HR teams to get ahead of the risk.
Yep.
Well, Chuck, that was a fantastic episode. A lot of great questions in there. It was kind of a Q&A story merge, right? It was kind of, we brought that together. You had some great stories around those questions, which was able to, I think, exemplify our answers a little bit better than we have in the past. So I appreciate you doing that and helping me along the way, because as you know, I've been really busy this week, so I didn't really get to prepare for this podcast. So let's do it again.
Yeah, I will. In fact, I've got 3 or 4 more stories, Q&A stories for next time. One that we didn't get a chance to get into today, but what do you do when an employee walks off mid-shift? I've had that happen before, and I cannot wait to talk about that. Folks, you've been listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there's a lesson in every story. We will see you next week.